Hi, my name is Jess X, and I am a Chinese diasporic filmmaker based in Philadelphia, and I am the director of AFTEREARTH.
Hi, I'm Shasha Lee. I'm a JiangXi Chinese American filmmaker. I'm currently in my hometown, Lijiang, China.
Well, yeah, so when I watched your film, I was just like really curious about kind of like your migration story, because I feel like for both of our work, like the diasporic experience like really informs our work. So I'm curious if you want to share with me a little bit about like kind of the your like migration story and how that kind of led you into filmmaking and compelling you to make this really beautiful documentary.
Okay, thank you for that question. I think it's a journey that is still unfolding. For example, I've been spending more time in China and specifically in Lijiang recently, and it's really interesting for me to come back here where I am now and kind of continuing that discovery after making the documentary. But going back, I think I've always moved a lot since I was a little baby. Within China first, because of family situations, I moved to live with my grandparents in Lijiang when I was little, for example. But then I also transferred elementary schools for like 5, 6 times. And then later I moved to the United States when I was 16. And I've spent like 20 years in the US. And then now I'm back in China again, spending more time in China. So I kind of consider myself to be a little bit of a nomad, which I think is interestingly kind of in the blood of the Nashi ancestry. And, you know, our times are, we live in a very interesting time right now. And there's a lot of migration going on in the world. And I think for me, something about Lijiang is just very special. When I moved back to Lijiang from the provincial capital city of Kunming, it felt like a time traveling experience, like traveling back in time and living in this very beautiful, poetic, ancient place that's kind of like frozen in time. And I don't think I've found another place in the world, not that I've traveled that much, but it's just very unique. So that's why it's like a huge source of inspiration for me. And when I watched your film, I was amazed by how I related to each of the stories. The fact that even though each person was speaking in like poetic verses or singing, a lot of the recurring themes are just like so relatable to me, like the connection to land and also you know, the mother-daughter ancestor descendant relationship and longing. I think that's very important in a world we're like heading into a very uncertain future. And my favorite quote from your film is, in order to have seeds, you have to have a history. And I really relate to that. And I think as I spend more time in Lijiang, I feel like I'm understanding more of my own people's history. So I wonder what inspired you to kind of like find the four stories and tell a story through this structure or format, and how that relates to your own migration experience.
But I guess before I go into my film, I just wanted to touch on how I thought it's really beautiful the way that in your film you approach the like it feels very much like a poem, and it's like cinematic. The cinematic medium is a way where the borders between like the US and China, all these man-made borders, and also the borders between yourself and your ancestors, it dissolves and it kind of finds a way into this this other like realm that feels very like mystical and spiritual. And I feel like it's kind of like an eye into like you give the viewer the privilege of being able to witness how you dream, or like, and how dreams can take us across borders. And I thought that was like really, really powerful. And I think we have a similar approach to filmmaking in that way, because I also feel like when I make films, it creates an opportunity to travel in time, and to also travel between realms, and the laws of this of like the man-made world kind of disappear. And so I made After Earth back in 2017. So that's almost 8 years ago. So my filmmaking voice has changed a lot since then. I kind of gravitated more into like narrative, and just like more like traditional narrative and documentary. But After Earth, I guess it was the most experimental film that I made. But in many ways, I feel like it was kind of like the purest that my filmmaking voice was, because it was before I went to film school and was taught in a very traditional way how to make films. So so I think it kind of started from this like opportunity with me and my friend Kit, who lived in Hawaii at the time. And then we wanted to kind of bring these 4 like vignettes of people that we knew that we had relationships with, and how they relate to their motherland and the environment. And we kind of didn't know what the film was going to look like at the end, but I think there was something that me and Kit were both searching for, that kind of revealed itself in the film, about like the ways that like being like an Asian American immigrant to the US, and the ways that we have to like come to terms with our identity as like a settler, or like a visitor on like other people's indigenous lands. But also there's a way to honor the indigenous people of the lands that we're on, such as the so we thought it was like really important to bring the voice of Hina, who's the native Hawaiian, and like was singing the song to protect Mauna Kea. And so then we invited her to be a part of the film. And I just remember a question that she asked me was like, because I was pretty young at the time. I was like 26 at the time. And then she was asking me, so you're having all of these women in the documentary to talk about their relationship to their motherland and their relationship to their like maternal lineage, but what is your relationship to your maternal lineage? And I realized in that moment in my life, I had been extremely avoidant towards my mother, and also even towards my like Chinese identity. So in a way, my personal voice was not really framed in this film that much, but by the end of the experience, I was I was able to find the vulnerability to finally begin the journey of like facing like why I have been so avoidant to my mom and also towards my family history. So this was the film that I needed to make in order to kind of like open that door, and the experiences that I had with the four women in the film um, was like kind of an invitation for me to also begin the journey that everyone in the film was invited to go on. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. That answers one of my questions, and I think it's incredible how the filmmaking actually changes uh, our lives as well. I definitely felt like the making of this doc was personally very transformative for me, and I also think you put it so beautifully, the melting of the borders, and the fact that we're having this uh, dialogue virtually across borders, given the times that we're in right now. I think it's a really nice realm as well, that space that we created to hold for this kind of dialogue. Do you think the making of this film also changed your relationship with the land in any way? I think you're
Right, yeah.
muted.
So the making of this, that's a really powerful question, and I think the making of After Earth is still changing my relationship to the land to this very day, because it was kind of how I became introduced to the Native Hawaiian struggle of protecting Mauna Kea, and so I made the film in 2017, and then in 2018, the next year, there was like an invitation for people who felt compelled to go to like Mauna Kea at the camp to like defend the camp. So I made like another visit back to Hawaii, like the next year, and I think um like and then I realized it's kind of like a lifelong journey in order to reconnect with um like the land, whether it is the land that we are settlers on, or the land that we immigrated to, or the lands that our ancestors came from. And I it made me realize that like so many years of colonization and like the the dominance that Western individualism has in our lives has like separated most of humanity from the land. And and I think when I was at Mauna Kea, there was a Native Hawaiian um, professor who was there who said something really powerful, that like in order to love another person, our love must move through the land, and if our love does not go through the land, it's almost like we have an incomplete form of love. And it made me realize that even as someone who has been where my parents' migration journey from Jiangxi to China to Canada and to the US has like separated us, has like caused my generation to grow up like separated from our lands. Um like learning how to be present and to tend to the land that I'm on now, even though it's not my ancestors' lands, is a pathway for me um to like access my capacity to love, and also my capacity to connect to my homeland as well. And I thought, and I think that's a journey that's going to continue to unravel for the rest of my life. So in many ways, After Earth was like an invitation to begin to shift my own relationship land and begin to relearn how to be a better ancestor for the lands that I am on and the lands I'm from for generations to come.
I definitely resonate with that. And when I watched your film for the first time, I was like, oh, the 4 elements of Earth. And I guess currently, I really resonate with that journey of there's so much to it in terms of the relationship with the land. But currently, I think I contemplate how our bodies are also composed of the 4 elements, like the fluids and the flesh, just like the earth. So we're actually not separate from nature. We're really a part of it. So I also think, the experience living in the West, I mean, it's just modern life in general, to a lot of us is so separated from nature that we've become very alienated from what is the most natural. And I really like the mom, Wang Ping, who gardens. I think that was also like such a powerful way to reconnect with the land for me when I grew the garden in Oregon. That was the best lesson and experience that we've been doing for ages. I was wondering if there were moments during the filming when the environment itself, like the ocean or the land, responded or interacted with the filming process in a way that surprised you.
Well, I think that's such a beautiful question, and I think we shot a lot of the film during Magic Hour, and I think like it felt like a really spiritual experience having being there with like the ocean and the mountain, and I think there's like I think during like Magic Hour, that's kind of when I feel like most connected to spirit and most connected to like the afterlife and stuff. And I felt like those were the moments that making the film and asking each of the 4 women in the film to like give an offering to their maternal generation. It felt like I was witnessing like a ritual, and I felt like it helped me connect to kind of like the spiritual aspects of being with the land in a way that like it helped where I felt like the land was telling me what the film wanted to be in a really powerful way. Yeah. And I guess like that brings me to a question about your film. Like I noticed that you have this like poetic voiceover kind of as a transition that ties together like some of the different like chapters and locations in your film, and I thought your voice was really beautiful and soothing, but the and like the moments where you use the voiceover, it was in like English, and and I was curious about in the making of the documentary, like how you came to use this like poetic voiceover, and if and also if the like editing process of the film, if it taught you anything new about yourself that was surprising.
So I think the essay documentary format is definitely inspired by filmmakers that I like Agnes Varda. And so for some reason, I was already very drawn to the essayesque or like poetic voiceover format in documentaries that are not very narrative driven. Um, so I think I also enjoy writing a lot. I've been kind of stepping away from the cinematic uh, explorations recently and focusing more on writing and still photography. And I'm thinking of starting a Substack channel, maybe. So I think it's just something I really enjoy. But the editing process of the film was very, very slow. I was basically shooting for a long time without having like a very coherent structure in mind. And then the pandemic hit. So for maybe 2 years, I just had a pile of footage and just this urge to say something about my longing for home and land and share what I know about the changes of my hometown. I had this urge, but it wasn't coherent at all. So it was a lot of going back and forth between working on the footage, editing visually, and writing the voiceover. Um, it was such a long journey that there's no like, oh, this is what happened and it happened. Um, so I also really struggled with the voiceover recording, even though I enjoy writing so much. Using my voice to narrate it was so difficult. And at first, it was mostly written in English. And then after maybe 2 years, my producers and I were like, oh, talk about reconnecting with my roots. I should consider writing parts of it in Mandarin as well. And the recording of it was so much easier for me to narrate in Mandarin. And it became, I think, because the people in the film also spoke a few languages. So that made it seem more natural that I also changed between languages. But after we made that decision, it made a lot of sense, I think.
Yeah, I thought the voiceover was one of the most like mesmerizing parts of the film. Like there's quotes from the film that I feel like are going to stay with me for a long time. Like I think at one point near the end it was like if a soul retraces its footsteps to its ancestors, then they can reunite on the mountains of paradise. And I feel like your film kind of embodies the journey of what it feels like for a soul to retrace our footsteps to our ancestors, and it takes us in a very sensorial and immersive like homecoming. And yeah, and I guess like what was also really powerful for me about the film is I also grew up in the Pacific Northwest, and I've been to the location in China, but my parents are also from and my parents are from Jiangxi, so there's like so much in conversation. And I just like couldn't stop thinking about like the wildfires and some of like what's happening now in California on the West Coast and kind of all over the world as we move into a place of fascism and also like climate destruction. And I guess I'm just like curious what do you think, or what do we think is like the role of like like deeply personal documentary or like narrative filmmaking as a way to kind of move through all the grief
Mhm.
of all of the loss that we are going to experience, and could film also be like a like a pathway toward like another world?
Yeah, absolutely. So in my own experience, the project started as something emotional and also intellectual inquiry in terms of like, oh, I want to learn more about the Domba faith. Uh, you know, oh, is it true? Is it truly possible that there are these nature spirits that are our half siblings? So it was definitely an intellectual inquiry and also like the emotional need to heal from what we're going through environmentally. So I think over the course of the filmmaking, it became very spiritual for me. And I think I'm very thankful for your comment about the voiceover because as you said it, I realized that um, I think of the film as a love letter to Lijiang, but to
Wow.
and to the land, but it's also kind of like setting this intention of giving back to nature as I take from it. So I realized when you were saying that it could also act as a prayer, um, because it literally ends with a Domba. Um, Scripture line, which is essentially a prayer. So I think to answer your question, um, I think, well, first of all, I think on a very, very big picture level, the cycle of life is like there is birth and then there's destruction. So I tend to go to that, just removing the human dramas in terms of, you know, our human incarnations, our civilizations. Maybe it is transient. We rise and then we'll probably fall, and then maybe give way to something better, hopefully. um, so I try to think of change uh, from that scope. Uh, Personally, that helps me kind of deal with what's going on in the world on many levels. And then on a personal level, with the artistic expressions, whether cinematic or otherwise, I think I work better when I don't really think about the audience's reactions. I think I work better when I like don't think about that. I just process the creativity as it comes. Um, so, and like a personal film like this is rather obscure in the grand scheme of things. But I think still the act of creation still carries something, even though it's hard to put the finger on what the actual meaning of it is. But I think in terms of like the praying and the intention setting, I think that's like a very direct way of interacting with the world at large. And by the world, I mostly mean like the natural and spiritual external world. I don't know, how do you feel about the role of filmmaking and making art?
Um, yeah, I love the answer that you had, especially about like how like this process, whether intentionally or not, it brought you closer to a spiritual practice, and then it eventually became a spiritual practice. And I love what you said about your film being a prayer. I think it's definitely a gift that will bring every audience who sees it kind of closer to the land or closer to finding their own spiritual practice. But and I feel like I see film really similarly, like I think all of my films are like prayers, but it's also like a window into the soul of the character. And I think um when I was making After Earth, I feel like um I was able to show a lot of like the beauty within each person in the film and their like wishes for like a better world and their relationship with their parents. But I feel like what I hope to show more in my future films is to also show the like ugliness and the mental health mental health struggles that we all have, and to not only show like the beauty and the prayers, but also to be as authentic as possible in showing just like kind of the whole complexity of of like the diasporic characters that I write, and giving us permission to be like ugly and messy on screen, and hopefully arrive at a place of beauty and healing at the end. And I think so now I see the purpose of film is both to make the prayer, but also to reveal the complexity of our humanity, and also maybe film can be a tool to um yeah, I guess maybe it can also be a more like active tool to reveal like how um um the the darkness of this world, before um we can imagine an alternative for like a better one, especially when mainstream media is not telling the truth about the oppression that is happening. So yeah.
Yeah,
um,
I think there's so much more we can talk
yeah,
about, and I think this was such a beautiful way to celebrate Earth Day
yeah,
this year. And I'd love to stay in touch because I feel like we have a lot more
yeah,
to
for sure.
share, and maybe there could be like future collaborations.
Yeah, I think that would be really powerful. So maybe do you want to quickly say like what is something you're working on next that you're excited about, and we can both share, and then we can
Oh yeah.
wrap this up.
Okay. Yeah. I think I'm working on starting a Substack channel that will be more writing and photo driven. But then I'll post like like mini short films maybe as well. And then the title tentative title of the channel is called Tracing the Stream as Though There May Be Light. And basically, it covers a lot of the same themes and like the continued explorations um, of, I think of it as the triad of the intersection of nature, spirituality, and basically traditional and indigenous cultures that that are close to me, mostly Nashi and Chinese cultures. So that's what I'm working on, and it will tying into the film projects that will maybe come much later. I work rather slowly, so that's what I'm working on. How about you?
Yeah, that's really exciting. I can't wait to subscribe and see the films that you make next. And I'm glad that your film process is very slow and meditative, because I feel like that's the opposite of how the Western world teaches us to make films, like executing products, which I'm trying to unlearn as well. But so I'm mostly working on my first narrative feature, and it's about non-binary Chinese American who returns to China for the first time in 20 years to find their estranged father, who's like a elusive biologist who studied the Baiji dolphins. And it's like a surreal road movie love story. It's parts of it are inspired by my own life, but it's also an act of fiction, and it's also kind of like based on comes from a longing to reunite with my parents' homelands in Jiangxi and come to terms with my father's absence in my life. So that's a feature, and hopefully we will shoot next year or the year after. Yeah.
That's so exciting. A lot of things you said already resonate with me a lot. So I'd love to support in any way. Yeah, but I think we can talk about it afterwards.